Hey everybody, the long-awaited content update for the Mists finally dropped. We're getting so much more rewards in the Mist now, chests everywhere, tons of more loot. So in this video, I tried out the new Mist in a 4.1 set of gear for 10 hours to see just how good the new rewards are. Now before we get into those rewards, first a little bit about the build I was using and the method I used to go about and do the mists. First up for the build, I was running a classic one-handed spear build with the one-handed spear, torch, assassin jacket, guardian helmet, leather shoes with refreshing sprint, just a normal cape, and then omelets for food and healing potions for potions. I haven't done that much mists even before this update, so I wanted just a general build that was good for both PvE and PvP that I was really comfortable with, and it ended up probably not being the best build to go with, but I'll touch a little bit more on this later. For how I actually played through these mists for my method, I basically just went from Brecilien and then focused mainly on those mob camp quests, just going from one to the next. Any of the new Nightfall Abbey dungeons that I came across, I would instantly go to, as the rewards there seem to be at least slightly better than those mob camp quests in the mists. And then for any marked objectives like the weakened wisps or the chests that spawn on the map, I would go to them if it was convenient, but if they were, say, on the other side of the map and I was doing a mob camp, I would just sort of ignore it and move on to the next thing. Really, for these marked objectives, they're not really super viable for 4.1 players, so I generally just ignored them, and if I went to them, I was mostly looking to just rat any kills. For the unmarked objectives like the spiders and the new coffers, I tried to do these as much as possible. If I saw them, I'd go to do them. When it came to PvP, I basically decided to only really go for a fight if I was confident that I could win, so I didn't really take any fights that I thought were going to be under a 50-50, and it kind of depended on my loot situation too. If I just got out and didn't have anything, I'd be much more willing to take a fight than if I had a bunch of loot on me. Basically, I just tried to play smart instead of playing for PvP content. I also tried to rat a little bit, steal kills, get some loot, but it wasn't super successful, so not a lot came from that. Alright, moving on to the rewards that I got from these 10 hours of the mist and the stats that I gathered. Well, let's start with some of the stats so you can see sort of what I managed to complete in these 10 hours. Now, I didn't track all the different rarities of the chests and stuff. I would have loved to, but with the amount of different chests there are and different rarities and all of that, it would have just taken forever to actually logistically go about and track all of that. So no rarities were taken, but I did get the amount of mob camps I completed and chests and stuff like that. So starting with the mob camp quest, the main thing I was focusing on, in the 10 hours I completed a total of 92 of those mob camp quests, so about around a 10 an hour if you're in a 4.1 set with pretty decent clear potential. One thing that took a lot of time away from that clearing though is the new dungeons that I went to in the mist. I went to them whenever I could, and so I actually ended up going to 12 dungeons, which took about quite a lot of time. And in those dungeons, I didn't track how many chests I got per dungeon or per room, like what the percentage chance was, but I seemed to be getting around like 15% of the rooms had chests versus buffs. I usually was leaving with around 1 to 3 chests worth of loot from an average run and getting around 15 rooms cleared. So the dungeons seem to be pretty good, and if you play for around an hour, you'll probably see one. They seem to be, on average, at least for me, was around 1 dungeon an hour found. For the new coffers, which are like the proximity-based chests, I was able to get 9 of these, so about 1 an hour again, but notably, the vast majority of these coffers were from inside Nightfall Abbey, inside those mist dungeons, so it seems like they're much easier to get inside of those than in the open world mists. For sort of the other objectives that I went to that I didn't really focus on, in terms of the chests that spawn that everyone can see, I actually managed to get none of these. They were always contested too much, so I didn't get any of these. Spiders, I only found 1. It was in the very corner of our map, but it was still pretty good. Weakened wisps, the ones that you have to take on a little journey to their destination. Again, only 1 of these. It was as the mist was closing and there's nobody else there, so I was able to get it. And then in terms of my kills and deaths, I managed to get 11 kills in these 10 hours with only 1 death. Now, being in 4.1, none of these kills were particularly big. I didn't manage to rat any like really juicy kills, but still decent added up altogether. Moving on to look at the juicy rewards, the stuff that I actually got from doing these 10 hours. Now, just to quickly note before I mention these, all of these values are going to be for a premium character, so assuming you have premium. If you do not have premium and want to get an idea of how good it would be for you, just divide any of the numbers by 1.5. So starting us off with Brecilien Rep, we got around 300k Brecilien Rep in the 10 hours, which is around 30k rep per hour. Not really sure how good or bad that is due to the Brecilien Rep mechanic being pretty new. For fame, we managed to get a total of 6.32 million fame from mobs, and then also on top of that, 3.4 million fame from the tome drops, which were constant in all of the chests. So if you add these together, we'll get a total of around 9.6 million fame, which is just shy of the 1 mil fame per hour mark. Looking at the total amount of money made, it was for the PvE side of things, I got a total of 10.16 million. You can see here it's very varied in terms of tier and stuff. We have tier 4, we have tier 8.1, so a lot of variation in the amount of loot you're gonna get. And the PvP loot was around 1.28 mil. Combined together, these make 11.4 million silver in the 10 hours. Now, for silver drops, they also add to the silver total. I didn't record these, I kind of forgot, and they're also really hard to actually calculate. But from going through the recordings and some estimation, it seems like you can probably expect in the 10 hours that I would have gotten about 2 to 3 million silver in those 10 hours. If you combine that on top of the 11.4 million that we got from the PvE money and the PvP money, that comes to around 14 million silver in the 10 hours, or about 1.4 million silver per hour. Last but not least, we have Might and Favor, which used to be pretty much the biggest part of the missed rewards. Now, in the 10 hours, I got a total of 91,000 Might and just shy of 17,000 Favor at 16.8 thousand. Now, this sort of surprised me at first because the favor is surprisingly low, and it looks like the mob camp quest that used to give a decent amount of favor got nerfed really heavily so that you weren't going to get over amount of rewards in the mist, so you're not getting as much favor as you used to get. Also, a little bit weirdly, because of this, usually the might to favor ratio is about 4 might to 1 favor, but in the mist it's actually closer to around 5.5 might to 1 favor, which is a little bit high on the might to favor, so that's a little bit odd. Now, how much is that actually 16.8k favor worth? Well, you can either spend favor on fame or money. For money, it's a little bit hard to estimate because the new patch is going to throw things out of balance. The markets are going to change a bit, so we can't get a super accurate estimate about how much silver each favor is worth. But for more estimates, it seems like right now it's probably around 1 favor is about 67 silver. So the 16.8k favor would translate to about 1.13 million silver. For fame side of things, it's much easier. You can buy those fame tomes at the energy manipulator, and 1 favor is equal to 100 fame, so that would equal 1.68 million fame. So depending on what you want to use your favor for, either the fame or the money can get boosted by around maybe 10 to 20%. Okay, so then looking at all of those numbers, doing the 10 hours, are the myths actually good? Is it worth your time to do the myths in this new update? Well, overall, these myths are actually quite good now. They're definitely in line with the other activities. They're definitely worth your time. I don't think they're overpowered, but they're definitely worth doing. On the fame side of things, it is a little bit low. They're definitely better to do for silver than fame as compared to something like open world mobs, but the fame still is pretty decent, coming in around 1 mil per hour. Usually the mark of a really good fame farm is 2 mil per hour, but we were doing this in 4.1, so that's obviously going to be a little bit less, and they are better for silver, so even for fame farming, not too bad. On that note, one of the things that's really nice about using the mist to sort of fame farm is while the total fame per hour isn't super high, a lot of the fame, about 1/3 of the fame that you get in my experience, comes from the tomes that you get from the chests and not from actually killing the mobs. This is really nice because tomes can be used to spec up anything you want, whereas the fame from the mobs you have to use on whatever you're using to kill them. So for example, if you have a PvP set that you want to level up, but a PvE set you want to make things faster to clear the mobs, then you can actually get around 1/3 of your fame towards the PvP set right away without having to use things like fame credits. So while the overall fame per hour in the mist won't be as high as doing something like open world mobs, the versatility of that fame is definitely higher. Also, another note on top of this is that these numbers can definitely be improved. Over doing these 10 hours, I pretty quickly realized that the build that I was running is not the best, and it can be a little bit better. It seems like going for a sort of general build that can PvE pretty well and can PvP pretty well is not the correct approach. Rather, in the Mist, you either want to go for a PvE set and clear the mobs really fast, or a PvP set and try to focus on the kills and the more PvP focused objectives. For example, if you look at my rewards, less than 10% of the reward that I got from the Mist in terms of money was from the PvP loot. So it would have just strictly been better for me to go in a PvE set and completely ignore any of the PvP. Really, as a low tier player, if you're going to do this in 4.1, I would suggest either going with a very good PvE set that can clear mobs very fast, that also has some mobility to allow you to escape if people try to kill you, or going for a PvP oriented more rat route like a Bloodletter or something, and putting the PvE on the back foot and just going more for those marked objectives, the PvP objectives, trying to kill people, trying to third party, doing all that sort of stuff to get your loot. Now, obviously, if you're going in higher tier gear like the 8.3s, then you do want to have like a solid PvP set that can actually fight and kill people. But if you're not going in like really high tier gear, I'd suggest going either more for a ratting style or more for a PvE style if you want to get the most bang for your buck, the best rewards for your time. Because simply put, the Mists are not made for good 1v1 PvP. If you go in a PvP set looking for nice 1v1s with other players, it's going to be pretty rare to find them. So taking all of that together, I would say that the Mists are definitely worth your time as a solo player. In fact, they're probably one of the best activities to do right now as a solo. The fame is pretty decent and the money is quite good, so as a solo activity, they basically hit all the markers. They're a good activity for a solo player. Now, real quick before I end this video, I just gotta say this, just gotta put this out there, just because I'm saying the Mists are good and worth your time, this is not a video about like, are the Mists well designed and like, are they fun? This is just purely like, are they worth your time to do? Are the rewards going to be worth it? In terms of my enjoyment of the Mists in these 10 hours, and if they're fun, that's an entirely different video. So if you want to see a video like that, subscribe, or if you like this one, subscribe and do all the other stuff you do to YouTube videos. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.